myself. Okay, yeah. So I am really confident in the fact that nobody can do what I do, how I do, like I do. So even if you have a mirror practice of me, you offer the exact same procedures, you've been practicing the same amount of time, da, 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 da. I am still very confident, and open up shop across the street from me, I ain't no thing. I am very confident in that. I know that. I know that. And I encourage my patients to go on other consults and go to other offices. And they're like, what? Why? Because I know I'll see you back. I'll see you again. I'll see you later. I know that. And it's because I know if they're coming to me, it's because I'm aware that there are so many options for them. If they're coming to me, or even versus the other practitioners in my office, I know that there's something specific about that they're seeking. And I know I'm also not everybody's cup of tea, which is why we have 2 other super talented clinicians in my practice. And all of us are very different and offer something very unique. And that's the art of medicine, right? That's the artistry component. And so I think that if people are really confident in what they're doing, then you can have this, everybody gather around, let's be really synergistic together. Because, and I hope that doesn't come off as like overly cocky, but I say that all the time. Nobody can do what I do, how I do, like I do. So hopefully they know they're not being like held hostage there with a syringe to their face. Like, you're going to get this Voluma and you're going to like it. They know that they can go anywhere, and patients will tell you that, and they should be able to. So you should value every single one of them that's in your chair. You know, they give me life, literally. I just literally love what I do so much. Every room I walk into, I just literally like gives me it either gives me one of 3 things: vibes, energy, or life. Okay. It's like one of the 3 will happen every time. And so I don't remember exactly how that tied into when we were talking about it being really competitive, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense though, because like everybody, because you were saying how people are hush hush in the industry because, you know, those things, and that it makes sense because people are scared of competition. But the thing about it is, statistically, there's so many more patients than there are providers. Talent is the #1 issue. So that means the lack of providers are not enough right now. So there's no.
And I think also not enough, or every provider isn't currently doing every single procedure either. I think that's true. A lot of times people don't worry about necessarily the new people. It's the existing people that they have. True. That really sets it off, because the people who are new coming in, they're like, I ain't worried about them. They don't even know, you know, they don't even know what gauge needle they're injecting, you know, they prefer to inject with or whatever. Yeah. But it's the people, when other, you know, practitioners really start to grow, that are maybe kind of more, not that anybody's above anybody else, but that is kind of more what you would think of if your counterpart or peer, or they get a new procedure, start doing something. There's like this, sometimes, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm told.
Yes, for sure. Is there anybody on social media that you follow that you would recommend other people to follow that are good?
I knew you were going to say something like that. You were going to put me on the spot. Yes.
It could be doctors, it could be providers, it could be.
And I'm assuming you mean aesthetic space.
Yes.
Hold on. Can I phone a friend?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah.
And no worries, we're going to drop all the names below. So anybody that would like to follow these people to gain more information or knowledge, all the names will be below, so they can go ahead and pull those up.
So I obviously am at your butologist, and I have, yes, and I'm going to be fully transparent here. You know, and I know I did not have a person on the ready. I'm outing myself because I am not the cool kid, but I wanted to have a really perfect answer. So I phoned a friend, and I would say the Lori Robertson, and her handle is Injection Expert. She's just definitely a very poised industry leader. She is incredibly talented, but also is very, you know, she focuses on the fundamentals of education and anatomy and safety. And I know that may not be the sexiest thing in terms of, you know, followers. So she has like, I think 100,000 followers. So she's definitely not hurting for that, but it may not be some of those components, I think, need to be highlighted more and really thought to be desirable and sought after, the knowledge base, instead of just like the pizzazz, because she's a really wonderful resource for both established injectors and new injectors in terms of clinical pearls and indications. And she's also just like the nicest person ever. She probably doesn't even know who I am. Hey, girl.
Amazing. I'm going to drop her information below so everyone can go ahead and follow her to gain more knowledge. So I know we talked about a lot continuous education throughout this whole interview. I wanted to talk about what's your view on continuous education and how important it is. And on top of that, which continuous education things you might recommend for a provider to take.
Wow, I just realized how incredibly lame and nerdy I sounded. Since we've already been talking extensively about continuing education, everyone's favorite topic. Oh yeah, I guess I am kind of a stickler for that. I think it's obviously incredibly important. I think it's amazing that we have, all of this new growth and interest and people really wanting to join the aesthetic space to provide excellent care for our patients.
Yeah.
However, I think that when you have the level of growth that we are currently experiencing, not that I'm like an accountant or numbers guru, but just from some of the recent conferences going to, I mean, that's all you hear about these astronomical data or metrics that are from different data collection points. And I think that's also what we know it's growing more because we have more ways to collect that data and information because our phones are all following and stalking us. But sorry, trigger warning. I'm not like being political or anything. I don't want to set anybody off with that comment, but I think that something that I don't see as much is the importance of education. And I talk to my patients about this a lot. I think that social media makes everybody look the same. You don't have ranks like you do in the military. Oh, I'm a sergeant injector. I'm a general injector. I'm a admiral or whatnot. We all look the same. And how do patients know? I always tell them they need to make sure that they go to a competent provider, especially if I ever inject anybody in a more high risk area, I educate them about that. And I also tell them that even if they don't get the treatment done with me in the future, they need to make sure they go to a very competent provider because this is not an entry level area to inject. And I say that all the time. And then this last patient I said it to came back at me with a question and I was stumped. She goes, well, how do I know who's a good provider to go to or a competent provider to go to? And I was like, good question. And of course you can do reading and things like that, but I think that it's difficult to discern. From a patient standpoint, I think that if you ask a lot of questions to your provider, or you should be allowed to ask a lot of questions without feeling bad or guilty or run off or dismissed. And the provider should be able to answer those questions. And if they don't know, and you start to smell, maybe a little not as genuine or factual information, I also told patients in the beginning of my practice, you know what? I want to make sure that I get you actually the very best and correct answer for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to consult with some of my colleagues and I am going to contact you. Can I call you tomorrow? And I'm going to make sure that I, put our heads together and get you a really definitive and expert opinion and advice on it. It doesn't say that I'm ignorant or not knowledgeable. It says I'm able to identify something that maybe I don't know or need to get more info on. I think that continuing education programs are incredibly important, obviously for when you're first starting out, but also as you continue to inject, which is, I think, the hardest part for a lot of people because you have an established practice. For you to go to continuing education, you have to take time away from your practice. Your patients aren't getting seen, your staff aren't getting hours, and you're doing kind of fine already, right? Like, what could you really learn that's going to be new? This is like the talk you go through in your head. And it's like going to the gym. I've never gone to a conference and regretted it, but I have been packing for one and been like, here we go again. So you have to really hold yourself to that standard. And the other thing is that there isn't like an official credentialing body in the aesthetic space. A lot of organizations and societies have great programs. American Society of Plastic Surgery, ASPS, has some amazing credentialing injector, introductory to injecting and also advanced injector courses. People will say they are an advanced injector. If they say that, do not feel bad if you want to ask for clarification. You know, my particular advanced injector credentialing required me to inject 1,000 patients, you know, and you have to document and log them and send them in. So those terms shouldn't be thrown around haphazardly, but unfortunately, because there isn't a bachelor's degree, master's degree of injecting, an official credentialing body that all of us uniformly use, sometimes they are. So just kind of being able to ask what those things mean, like, oh, I just woke up today and I thought I felt very advanced. Okay. And I will say, I think there's another really great training program called the Aesthetic Immersion that utilizes a lot of like industry leader, expert, super talented clinicians, both docs and mid-levels and nurse injectors as well. And it's called the Aesthetic Immersion. And they'll be at trade shows and things like that, but you can also sign up for a lot of their courses and you can get hands-on one-on-one training. And they just do it impeccably. You know what I mean? They've got their rhyme and rhythm down. You go through and you get just like the full level of treatment or level of training to do that treatment, not just once, but proficiently with multiple inputs from different trainers and maybe one or two other clinicians that go to it with you. And I think that that's also incredibly helpful too, because you're getting the hands-on directive.
Nice. And I'm going to drop that below so you can go ahead and check that out also. Yes.
How did I do that like before? These are syringes, by the way. I don't endorse gun violence. These are syringes.
Yes.
I'll shoot you in the face, but just with the
So let's talk about conferences. Now we met at a conference, AmSpa. Yes. I love them. What conferences would you suggest to providers that are great in the industry?
Yes. So we met at AmSpa, which is a newer conference. It's about 5 years old. And I think I went to the very first one of those and I had not been back since. So it was nice. But obviously that's a good one. I think it's definitely gotten better. And we had just amazing keynote speakers, Dr. Nassif. I mean, I won't even start name dropping all of them, but really was the best of the best.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite conferences, I said shows. It is in Vegas, is the Vegas Cosmetic Show. You're live. It's the Vegas Cosmetic Show. And I'll give you one guess of where it's hosted.
Where?
Vegas. It's called the Vegas Cosmetic Show. Thank you for setting me up and giving me that bone. So it's at the Vegas Cosmetic Show, I think every June or July. Yeah. And it is huge. It has everything from its plastics, derms, aesthetic, or cosmetic surgery. It's everybody. And there are multiple clinical tracks for clinicians, but there's the expo hall and the business and practice management tracks are also very expansive. And it's a really great conference. Bring comfortable shoes, Jonathan. No pumps. You definitely need to make sure you got some flats there. Okay, you're gonna be putting in you're gonna get your steps that day. I guarantee that.
No, I definitely have to come to that one. I heard about it before, but now that you recommend it, I'm definitely going to that one this year.
Yeah, it's worth it for sure. Book early so you get a good hotel room in the hotel of the conference. I think it's usually I don't remember. And we had a lot of conferences here in San Diego recently, which was awesome.
Really?
Yeah, well, like it's smaller ones, Mertz has put on several. I just went to some leadership summits with Mertz, and they hosted here. And they wouldn't even validate my parking at the hotel. And I was like, I'm the cheapest date you got here. You're not even paying for a hotel room for me. I'm staying at my house.
Yeah.
You can't validate my parking. It was $90.
OMG. OMG. That's crazy.
I know. I was like, did you guys wash and detail my car as well? I mean, I don't know.
Wow. San Diego.
Yeah. Oh, dude. General Derms crushed it. They honestly, Plastics versus derm. And this is important. You need to tell your people this when you're placing.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is something you don't realize. So when you're in plastic surgery, everybody thinks plastic surgery is the sexiest, like, oh, the most, oh yeah, you're the big roller, you got stacks, right? You're wrong. My friends in med derm were crushing it way earlier than faster than I did, okay?
Yeah.
Because when you do derm and you do an excision, a procedure, which I do still regularly, but I do all cash pay derm, so it's not through insurance. But what happens is that you do that procedure, it doesn't take nearly as long as like a whole surgery for the day, right? So you can do a lot more of them, but they yield a high amount. However, when they come, and they have to always come when they have something like that done for follow-up appointments, when they come for those follow-up appointments, each one of those follow-up appointments is also billable to the insurance. So they get paid for those. When you do plastics or reconstructive surgery, right? And I do a breast cancer reconstruction. So we're talking about a tram flap, a deep flap. These are huge 6+ hour surgeries. You don't get reimbursed at the rate that they say you will. It's the only industry I've been in where it's like, oh, we'll pay you 60% and we're going to pay you 9 months later after you have 2 full-time people calling us every day asking us where your money is. When you see them for their post-op visits, and their post-op visits take a long time. You could be doing wound debridement, patient education, mobility training. Every appointment within that first 90 days is so lengthy and time consuming. And guess what? You don't get to bill their insurance for it. It falls within something called the global period, which is 90 days after a surgery. If a patient has to come and see you, the insurance company says, well, that's your fault and your problem. That's part of the surgery that we barely paid you for. So you don't get paid for any of them.
That's horrible.
It is. And so people think that like plastics, it's like, is it full plastics, or are they doing a lot of insurance work as well? And they are. There's reasons for that, right? But I think that people don't know that. And I didn't, at least. Maybe they do. And I'm just like the person being like, have you guys heard of the internet? This World Wide Web thing is crazy cool. Like the last one of the party. But it does really vary tremendously. And I think that if it's something that they really, a lot of times, docs, and I think particularly plastic surgeons, maybe some derms, they do it to test you. Like the very first time I had to fly to Africa for our international practice, he told me that I had to pay for it myself. And I did. I paid for it. And I don't know if you've ever tried to buy that plane ticket, but even economy is like $4,000, okay? And I was new in my career. I didn't have,
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, I got student loans to pay. And I bought my ticket. And then when I went the next day to work and I told him that I bought it, he then pulls out the checkbook and he starts writing me a check. And I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, I just wanted to test you. I wanted to see how committed you were. And he was, of course, paying for it. And sometimes there are things like that. They just want to see what you're going to do. And I ain't mad at it, because as soon as they get in, when you're in aesthetics, they have to start training you now. And because you can't jump in and do anything. So they've got to get resources, right? Take time. And they got to get the syringes so that you can inject. I'm going to spend so much money on you. And you're already then asking me out the gate to be paying you more money before you're even able to do something. So maybe they could do a provisional at like 70 or something low like that. But you're in an understudy program. You're not even seeing anybody. And then after 3 months, and you make sure they have an onboarding like schedule set. If you can make sure that then, and then we reevaluate. And if you're making X, Y, and Z, this is the potential that you can be earning here. I think that's what people need to know is what's the potential that I can earn here if I crush it. And people think that, when you take that opening bid, that people put a lot of credence into that. Of like, that's telling you how much you can make there. If you're a new injector, that's telling you nothing. Ask them, what's my earning potential here? And how do I make that happen? Tell me how you want me to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get you. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's good.
I'm telling myself if I ever interview. You see that? I'm like, oh yeah. Stay strong.
You will eventually. You will. Like, even though like you've been in your practice for a long time, you love it. Eventually, you go through different time periods in your career, so you'll want something different.
Like how? Why do you say that?
Because like I think like after a certain period, either injector wants their own practice or they want some type of like,
not me. Not
they
me.
want to be in management or something where more it's like, they want more than just injecting.
See, that's the thing is for me, I don't just inject. So I have, and I am the weird person. I have been told, I do not know how many times that I need to have my own practice, and I don't ever want to do it. The reason is that I run a certain kind of ship, and well, this isn't news if anybody knows me or my husband heard me say this. I require a lot of overhead. Because I think that people feel that way when they are just injecting, because if they're just injecting someplace, all they need are syringes and can start injecting on their own, right? But for me, like, I like walking into my practice. This is why I'm a PA. This is why I do what I do. I like walking into my practice and knowing that if I'm not there, it will still run. It is so much pressure on you when you're not there that essentially it's harder to keep staff, because if you're not there, they're not making money. They're not there to assist you. And so then you have to or especially when you first start out, maybe you're not as busy, so they're only part-time with you. So it's hard to keep them. So because they may have 2 part-times and then one has got to go eventually. You know, I want people that are super dedicated. I want to keep my staff for a really long time, and I want to grow. I use a lot. I have like literally, I call it laser lane. And these lasers are not cheap. I mean, we're talking 200,000, 300,000, 100,000. I have every single trick and tip and tool in my toolbook. And I like being able to do that. And I like being able to offer all of those things. I've got 2 old therapy machines, 4 cool sculpting machines. I've got like 2 pico lasers. I mean, these are big things. And obviously we have multiple because we have multiple providers, but I like being able to take a vacation, even though I don't do it at all. I didn't take a single vacation last year because I had my knee surgeries, and people were like, oh, you were out on vacation. I was like, no, I was recovering from a traumatic surgery in bed. That's not a vacation. That's called, and they were like, take 8 to 12 weeks off. And I was like, okay, 10 days. That's good, right? Crutches and like, but I've opened secondary locations before. And we actually are kind of in the process of doing that now. But I don't even look forward to that, because I like just having everything. I have a big mansion house that I get to plan and have lots of different things. I do a lot of different things. Like I said, I was in surgery. Yesterday I did lipo I did full thigh reduction yesterday. I suctioned out almost 5 liters of fat. So I was there to share my tips and tricks. And because they say, well, everybody wants Botox, blah, blah, blah. And she told me that some of these people, when they place an order for Xeomin, are 2 vials. I was like, wait, total? Like, we placed for like 100.
Wow.
So the pricing obviously is very different with that. But yeah, you do have to purchase it pretty regularly to maintain the status and the pricing. So they're going to be paying more too. That's another thing. Like I would never, if I did like my own location, I would only do it as an extension of an established practice I've already been a part of.
Gotcha.
But that's because I work also with really good people.
And
don't get me wrong, we have had our moments, but I also need to be told when I'm having a moment. You know what I mean? I'm not perfect. So when my biggest thing is that every time I've had a problem, maybe they didn't do it as fast as I wanted, but we've worked through all of them.
Yeah, that's good. That's really, really good.
But I love if you need resources or things like that, or other people like for trainers, like comparison points, let me know. If I don't know somebody, I might probably know someone that knows someone.
Everyone. I want to literally speak to everyone. That's good. That's amazing. And I wanted to thank you for that connection also with the Mertz guy you introduced me to.
Oh, Roberto Casas. Yeah, he's like the head of everything.
Yeah, he introduced me to, I don't know, I think she's like the vice president. I don't know her exact title, but she was just telling me that they're trying to like do a lot of stuff within the clinics and stuff. And now we're talking, so it's interesting.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's great. And he's done everything. He's also like a very real person too. And you'll probably find that with Mertz. Mertz is like, it's a family run or family owned like run. So they're kind of known to be a little bit like warmer than Allergan. He's obviously just like I made a joke actually. This was like 5 or 6 years ago, actually at the Vegas Cosmetic Show.
Yeah.
And it was that, I'm pretty sure the Venetian or the Bellagio. Maybe it was the Bellagio. It was the Bellagio, I think. And I'm there, and Allergan, this was I think a while ago, they bought Cool Sculpting and Kybella from Alpheon, and it was like that was the big, they had bought a whole bunch of stuff. And so then somebody was telling me this, and I was like, oh my God, yeah. And did you hear they bought the Bellagio too? And they were like, what? They did? And I was like, no, they didn't, obviously. But the fact that you believe me, like they just eat up everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mertz is, I'm really glad, because I also felt so bad because that night I felt like he was pulling me in so many different directions. Like that night I was supposed to go be with like the other head of Mertz at this really cool club, but we were sitting at this kind of lame bar, and he was like, no, we'll just sit here. And I was like, I literally was showing him pictures. I was like, look, they want him. And he was like, yeah, we'll go there. And then I was looking for you before in the dance floor, and I was like, no, where'd Jonathan go? I apologize.
No, you're good.
I usually know nobody at the place, but I don't know. That was like, made me look like I knew a lot of people, but it was just like I think a weird coincidence. So sorry about that. I hope you had a good time.
I did. I had such a fun time. Amazing time. Amazing time.
How
and
are
I didn't even know.
Finding people to place them?
Yeah, I think it's really about community. I think that's the biggest thing, like knowing all these people and then treating them right. Like I said, I don't work with every practice. Only work with practices that I feel like treat their injectors great. So when I place these injectors.
How do you know if they do though? Especially if they don't have an injector already.
Well, all the practices.
I'm sure nobody's like, oh yeah, I have a great practice, but my leadership skills are total trash.
Yeah. Well, this is a cool thing. So when I'm talking to injectors, I always ask them about their current practice. Well, how do you like your practice, whatever. So before I even go and introduce myself to the company, I know a little background knowledge because
and it's not another injector, like somebody who works there or something.
Exactly. And then once I meet with them, I talk about all their benefits. If they're lacking in certain parts, I tell them, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And they'll say, okay,
the practice or the injector?
The practice.
Oh.
Yeah. So because I feel like if I don't step in and say something about the industry, it's gonna go like this.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. That's why I like harp on the education thing and like people being really. So I don't think I know now. For context, before you finish explaining that, what is your background? How did you get into doing this?
Yeah. So I started in healthcare recruiting for hospitals, and I was doing it for about 5-6 years. And
y'all are like the worst girlfriend in the world. Y'all never lose a number. I swear to God, I still get calls, and it'll pop up on my phone, and my girls, I'll be like, oh, can you answer this? And it's like, healthcare recruiting, job placement, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I promise I did not tell them to call me. But y'all never lose a number.
Yeah, no, they have a great CRM and everything system. And then this guy reached out to me. He wanted me to start his healthcare department. And I worked with him to start his healthcare department. And I found out about cosmetic dermatology. And I was like, whoa, you guys are not only providers, but you're artistic people too. Like not everyone can do this. Then I started learning more about the industry.
You should say that more, because everyone thinks they can do this.
No, not everyone can do this. I started learning more about industry, and I was like, there's no representation here, like none. So once I started learning more and more, I just invested myself more and more into the industry. And then.
And when you mean representation, you mean for like from a recruiting standpoint?
I don't even think like I start like the more I do this, I don't really call myself a recruiter as much, because it's like I'm doing so much more than that. Like really talking to them about the job and how much they should make in the market, and talking about what to accept.
Kind of like an aesthetic ambassador.
Exactly like that. You know what I mean? That's what I'm really specialized in, because like nobody knows.
You're definitely a consultant. You're a practice and staffing consultant for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're giving input to the practices too. Yeah, I mean, that's big. And I mean, you have to always be really careful of that, because sometimes some of them will be like, we're perfect. Are you kidding me? But if they're open, you know that already, that's awesome. Do you charge a separate fee for that?
I don't. So I've only been in business on my own for 2 years now. So I'm still growing towards that. But no, that's exactly where I'm going to lead towards.
I love that though. You're doing it now initially, then you can start to get referrals and based off and then have, once you've really honed it, then do like a curriculum or whatnot, and then you can really charge for it formally. I will say, I think that another thing that, I don't know if you help new injectors or clinicians going out on their own, but I do think that there's definitely a niche for that because a lot of them I find scarily are going out on their own after they've been practicing for like 2 or 3 years because they think that, to me, like if you're going out on your own, you're telling me, this is also because I come from plastics. So like I have peeled thousands of faces back and dissected them and put them back together again. These people haven't even, like when I was at that cadaver course at AmSpa, nobody at that table had ever even done a cadaver lab before.
Wow.
So you're talking about a huge disparity, and every other one of them at that table owned their own practice.
Wow.
So I think that there needs to be and they may own it through a doc or whatever, because they have to have, you know what I mean? But a lot of them don't, like nurse practitioners now in California, they don't need to.
Yeah.
And it's like, you've been practicing for 2 years. If I expected to see and know how to treat every single thing and complication my first 2 years, and remember, I was doing 80 hours a week, I would have been gravely selling myself short.
Yeah.
And I just think that when they go out on their own, they don't understand even what they should be making or how much the overhead or red tape is. I think honestly, a huge thing that you could be doing if you know a lot of people or getting a lot of exposure to that, developing like a consultant program for starting your own. If you were at this, subset here, and you can start with that data collection, you should be making X by this point, X by this point. You should expect to be in the red for this long. You should, you know what I mean? I think that it all looks super sexy, and I cannot tell you like how many people I've talked to, and they, like I was talking to one of them at this old therapy leadership summit, because it was everybody who owned their own practice there except me. Because I kind of have like my own practice inside my practice. And if we do a second location, it'll be like just mine and stuff like that. But I am not paying the bills to keep the lights on there. I'm not paying the bills. And that's what I haven't. I'm like a kind of like a trophy wife. You know what I mean? I like coming, all those stuff is established, and it's like, pamper me. But and don't divorce me. It's cheaper to keep me. You know what I mean? So, but they were telling me, they're like, when I went out on my own, I did not know anything. Oh my God. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I asked them how long they were practicing before, and they're like, a year. And I'm like, oh, okay. But Jonathan, you would do really, really well with that, because that is also taking off a ton. And nobody else, I don't know anybody else doing that at all.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely want to get into that. No, definitely. And that's what my journey is actually this year. I have a game plan for that, because you're exactly right. Nobody's doing it at all.
And they need to. Like, you could like get you like a badge, like a hall monitor stash. But I mean, it does. I mean, it's and I've always thought about this too. I've even bought a website or two for company ideas. I've thought in terms of kind of doing a consulting, but from a clinical standpoint, like, and I actually heard at the conference now, there are several people doing this, but essentially like sending Jenny University, you need to have a plastic surgery PA who can do X, Y, and Z. All right, send them to me for 6 weeks at this cost. I will get them ready to go the way you want, the way you like, confidently, and send them back to you. So you don't have to take the headache or the time to do it. And you're getting someone with actual like tangible skills you can put to work. But then I was like, but that's still like dependent on me doing right. And I'd rather be seeing patients. So
yeah, no, I get
like,
you.
You need to come up with an idea that you don't have to actually physically do. And I'm like, but that's kind of like the only thing I really know.
But yeah, the industry's so new.
I feel like you're on fire. If you did this only 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years.
That's crazy.
Thank you. Yeah. Like I'm so committed. Like
during COVID. Life. That's during COVID.
Yeah. During COVID. So the guy that found me to start his healthcare department, he had to shut it down during COVID. And I was like, this is my industry. I got it. I just started pushing.
And that's like COVID kind of like was the a big motivator transition point. I know so many people like that. Part of me, I'm not gonna lie, part of me sometimes I'm like, if I have my own practice, but then I'm like, wait. They're also, I'm not naive, and I don't think like, oh, if I had this, like I much more like the devil, you know. I don't like taking risks. I'm very conservative on that standpoint, but I do sometimes fantasize about doing that. And when I went and I talked to my practice manager about it, she was like, well, we'll get you your own space. Like, you don't need to worry about that. Yeah. Like, well, that means that you're smart, because you know what a sparkly diamond you have on your finger. And I'm the diamond in this analogy. But the second thing is that it does come with a lot of headache, and then growing and expanding your repertoire of what you do, it becomes really difficult because yeah, you may be making it okay in the green with injecting, but maybe you want to add anal therapy. And when you buy a device like that, it's just on you to work it, you know what I mean? And then, or if you can afford to employ other people, but I think that sometimes I kind of wish or think about that, but then I think of what does it really give me over what I currently have, and not anything. It's just the idea. I'm interested to know how many people you feel like, do you hear people when they're going out on their own that you feel like you're like, oh God?
A lot of them start with training. So they start with like training other injectors, and that's their way to kind of do, and they have their clientele on the side in their clinic. So they do both. And then once one side grows enough, then they kind of go over it.
Do they, when they start training, how many years have they been injecting?
The ones that have really successful practices right now, they've been doing it for like 7-8 years at least before, and then they start training. But it's what I was going to tell you is these two guys in New York City, they're starting something very revolutionary in the aesthetic industry. So to your point, so they open these offices where they have these devices like lasers and all these devices that you would buy, right? Mm-hmm. And you can rent these offices now as a provider and do your own thing. And all the stuff is already there.
That is revolutionary. I actually started doing this and didn't even know it was an option, because the reps are never going to tell you it's an option, because they only get money when they sell you something, not when you rent something. But when I was growing, obviously in Atlanta, I had a very diverse patient population. Yep. And I really wanted to start doing CO2s, but not all of my patients. Obviously, when you have Fitzpatrick 4, you can do 5, 6 though. Not super great candidate for CO2. And that was a huge part of my patient population. In fact, I would have patients tell me all the time, they're like, no offense, but we're not going to touch my face. There's a big cultural, hesitancy to do that, which I totally understand. And my patients would tell me, like, literally, I'm looking at you like, what do you know about my skin, white girl? Like, and I would actually tell them, I actually, for majority of my career, actually moving to San Diego is when I have, and with this derm experience, have a lot. Before moving here, had way more experience dealing with darker skin types, 5 and 6, hands down, than lighter skin tones. But my patients were really hesitant. So I couldn't justify spending $120,000 on a CO2. Mm-hmm. So I asked the guy, and I told him, so I kind of started saying like, oh, I don't know which one I want to buy. Could I try some of them, before I commit to one? Of course, me being me, like I have such commitment issues. Like, so I don't have a tattoo. Don't tell my husband, but like, I just cannot. Like, when it asks you, are you sure you're sure on the computer? You're like, yes. And it's like, are you double sure? I'm always like, I don't know. Let me double check it. Yeah. So I asked him if I could trial them. And I did. So I would do fractional Fridays. So I do a whole day of CO2s. I would consolidate all my patients on one day for the month, and he would bring me a different machine. And then I really liked using the different machines. And I was like, can I just keep doing this actually? And he was like, well, technically, yeah, you can rent it for the day. And I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to be doing that. I always get the newest machine. Yeah. I don't have to pay the maintenance bill or the warranty. And I can consolidate all my patients, because otherwise the machine's just sitting there. And so I don't know how much they do it. I don't know if it was just because I had a good relationship with that rep, but I have always thought that. So the fact that you say that they're doing it, obviously now they own the machines and they're then renting it out. Yeah. I never thought, oh, we could take it into our own hands, and like, it's like, starting your own pharmacy or something. Like, you're just buying all from the manufacturer, or your own medical supply company, right? You buy it all up from them, and then you open up shop and run it the way you want. That is so smart, and I'm so mad I didn't think of it.
Yeah, no, they're just starting too. Like they only are in New York, but they're expanding to Miami,
What
I
are they
think this
called?
year. Nolo Aesthetics, Nylo Aesthetics.
Oh, like New York? Or
Oh
wait, no, what
yeah.
is it? Wait, Nolo?
NY,
Like Nolo?
yeah. Nyolo Aesthetics.
Honestly, it's awesome to see a new face in the recruiting and placement arena, because I mean, like I told you, Mary Beth was one of the very first, she's still one of the only ones. She obviously has been in the industry for, she was at Allergan over 2.5 decades.
Yeah.
And it's still, she just started tightness. I was like her first placement, her second one. I
Yeah.
told you already, but but she's a very kind of familiar face to that, and which I totally love, and no knock on her. And
Yeah.
I'm also saying this is an encouragement to you, and also coming from a practice in Atlanta, going to conferences with one of the only Black plastic surgeons there, period.
Mm-hmm.
It is a non-diversified space, and
No, thank you. Thank you. That was a lot, but no, that I love that because that's exactly what I'm trying to accomplish. Exactly what I'm doing. You see my vision. So I appreciate that a lot, honestly.
well, you're a hustler too. And this isn't easy to do, period. I saw I'm like so flabbergasted. I'm like, how are you doing this? Do you know someone? Is your daddy someone? You got a cousin who, like how on earth?
Yeah.
27. I mean, you started that coming when you were 25 then.
Yeah, no, it's 25. Yeah. Yeah.
What have I done with my life? Gee.
Well, thanks, Jenny, for sitting down with me and speaking more about the aesthetic industry. I know a lot of my viewers will learn a lot about cosmetic dermatology, in general dermatology, and also your surgical part that you do. Tell everybody where they can find you and what you have planned next.
Well, usually you can find me in OR2 or exam rooms 2, 12, and 8 at NOAC Aesthetics. Again, my practice is in Eastlake. It's in South San Diego, NOAC Aesthetics. And I'm on Instagram at I could do this, your Butologist, YOUR, and then Butologist, BEAUTOLOGIST, the clinical aesthetic. That is my Instagram. You also see links to our online store at my current practice. And yeah, I'm in San Diego. If you are ever on the West Coast area, feel free to hit me up.
Amazing, amazing. Well, until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye. We'll talk soon. See you in 3
Yes.
months for your next Botox. Okay, Jonathan?
Yes, definitely, definitely.